I think that's a nuanced question too. We said there's a certain number of eggs, so you may be that once you hit 50, those eggs have been used up and there's no more estrogen coming from your ovaries. So that part I don't think we can delay. There's things that can happen throughout our life, like pregnancy will delay it a little bit. Birth control will delay it. So these things where we weren't ovulating, those moments in our life will change. I don't think by very much. I don't think it'll change it by years, but I think it will push it. And then there's theories around using HRT for really high doses of HRT, which will get women bleeding for long periods of time. It doesn't mean you're having true ovulation and you're actually producing those eggs and that estrogen and progesterone from that, but instead you're manipulating the system to make it look and feel like you're having a cycle every month.
Yeah, that's very nuanced because when
Yeah.
you do take HRT before the 12 consecutive months without your period, which defines menopause, you
Right.
don't know what your meno birth date is.
Yeah.
Because if you are doing the cycling and the bleeding, if you don't, then you don't. But if you are cycling progesterone, for example, using it from the last 2 weeks of your quote unquote cycle, assuming, but you're making this transition with a normal cycle or wonky cycle, but you have normal bleeds with, because you haven't entered in menopause yet. And then when you enter it, you don't really know. And so
Mhm.
how does somebody, one, does it even matter if we know our menopause birth
Right.
date? And two, how else would you know?
Women will symptomatically start to feel different in their bodies. And the only way we would still have this cycle going forward after menopause in the same way is if we're really doing high doses of hormones. If you're doing actual physiological doses, I like to use with bioidentical hormones, you will stop bleeding eventually. So I think it really depends on the type of hormone therapy that you're using. And symptomatically, you would know when you're transitioning because you won't have those ups and downs throughout the month that you normally would when you have a cycle. So, for example, around ovulation, your libido goes a little bit higher. And before ovulation, you have more energy. There's this cycle that your body goes through after ovulation. You're feeling a little bit more inwards, maybe a little bit more fatigued. And so we get to know this pattern that we have throughout our cycle. That pattern becomes a little bit more, every day feels a little bit more similar than it did before. So that's one way. And then the other way is actually testing and looking at your hormones coming off of the HRT and seeing, okay, where's my FSH? Where's my LH? Where's estrogen? All different types of estrogen, what they're doing in my body, and looking at it from that direction. So, what I have seen over the years, I had one woman come to me. She lived in England and then moved to Vancouver and still wanted to continue her HRT. She was taking 100 milligrams of estrogen.
100 million, but what is that? What does that in the blood look like? Because we know this
Oh,
is
so in
taken.
yeah, so in the blood, hers was looking between 600 to 1,000. It was going in between there, which is quite high, even for a cycling woman. And her progesterone was a lot lower than that. But she was on such a high dose. I have her on 1.25 milligrams right now. That's how low we got. And she's still getting the benefits of estrogen. She's still feeling really good, but she was on such high levels. She didn't want to bleed anymore like she was. And so we got her down to this physiological level, and she's still really thriving in her menopause years.
Why don't you explain that a little bit? Because there's super
Yeah.
physiological levels, and then
Yeah.
there's physiological levels, and then maybe
Yeah.
explain the different levels so people understand.
Yeah, so when you look at blood work, I tend to do more urine testing when it comes to the different types of estrogen, but when you're monitoring HRT, it could be helpful just to look at blood work. And so when you're seeing less than 40 when it comes to estrogen, that the woman is getting less estrogen in her body. And so physiological dosing is just upping it a little bit. It may go up to 150, maybe 200. And so when you're in that physiological range, it's what the body needs to feel supported and needs to still get those benefits for her bones, for her heart, and for her brain. But when you start going supraphysiological, you're actually creating thickness in your uterus and you're actually starting to shed parts of that uterus. So women may start spotting every month or even throughout the month is what I've noticed. And so the difference is there's different theories that if you have those supraphysiological dosing, that you're protecting your bones and your heart more than you are with just the physiological dosing, the lower. But what I have seen over the years, same benefits. If anything, the lower amounts to me, feel safer, and women like them too, but the super physiological just, to me, doesn't make sense, to be honest. So when your brain isn't getting the estrogen that it needs to boost up that serotonin to feel joy, or that dopamine to feel that pleasure, or when your progesterone's not showing up to give you that calm through GABA, then those triggers in our present day are going to feel bigger and amplified because we haven't healed what was already there. And so it may be there's something going on in your relationship, or something in traffic, or just overwhelmed by a deadline, or your kids talking over one another. The sounds are just too much. And yes, it's about the present moment, but it's often about the fact that we've been living out this pattern that just hasn't served our nervous system, which then hasn't served our hormones.
Chewing gets amplified too.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
breathing.
the worst for
Not allowed to
me.
breathe in front of me.
No, the chewing granola especially. I don't know what it is about that crunch, but it's
And
not
worse if
good.
the mouth is open chewing.
Yeah.
It's amplified. It didn't bother me before, and
Yeah.
now it's okay. But the whole tolerance thing that's going
Yeah.
down, I always think it's a bit of a superpower. I think it's tolerance for this anymore. I'm just not going to
Yeah.
take it.
I can speak my truth now.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
Say
Yeah.
it how it is. Yeah, I do think it's a superpower. I think it's more daunting when I had a mom come in one day and I'm overreacting to my kids and it's changing my relationship with them. And I don't want, and I can't even control it. I can't even control myself in that moment. That's where that discernment needs to come in of, okay, maybe physically, physiologically, you're just not getting enough of what your body needs. You're not getting enough nourishment. You're not getting enough hormones. So when we have that foundation, then we can pause, then we can breathe, then we can ask ourselves, why are we so triggered? Is it about this moment? Does this actually belong to me? And then there's space and time to actually ask those questions and heal and understand. But when our body isn't giving us what it needs because it's not receiving what it needs, it's so difficult to feel balanced, so difficult to respond instead of react. It's pretty 50-50 with me. I think because of how much information there is out there now. So some will come and be like, I just want to go on hormones. I know it's going to help me. But then through our conversations, she'll start to understand that, okay, it's not just about the hormones. Get her feeling better with a little bit. And then, okay, let's talk about your digestion now and then see what we can do for that. Let's talk about your immune system. Why have you been getting sick so often? And we'll start to do that other work alongside. And then yes, I have ones that are like, I don't want to do hormones. I just want to do everything naturally. And then we find the herbs that are going to support her. We find the lifestyle factors. She knows she's already ready to work hard to get there because it just doesn't happen overnight. And then she learns more about herself through that process too.
You mentioned testing is one of the first things that you do. What
Yeah.
testing do you do?
Yeah, so I do a combination of blood work and also urine testing for hormones. So I will do the Dutch test. And then with that, I will test their fasting insulin. I'll do a full thyroid panel through blood. I'll test their homocysteine. I'm looking at their CRP. I'm looking at their lipids. I want to see their ApoB, their LPA, because I want to get the full picture of our cardiovascular system as well. So those are, I would say, the big markers that I'm doing with everyone, their regular CBC and ferritin as well, to check out her immune system.
Good. Those are all in my list of labs.
Oh, good.
And
Excellent.
and in case nobody knows what the Dutch is, it's the dried urine test of comprehensive hormones.
Yeah.
You pee in a little cup and you put these little strips in, you wait for them to dry. It's a way to test urine metabolites, and there's other ways. That's just one of the brands that are out there, but
Yeah.
it's a way to see how your hormones are behaving, right? Through
Yeah.
your urine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it gives you this picture of your liver too, and how you're methylating, and whether, if you're on hormone therapy and if your body's not responding to the estrogen the way we want it to, it may be a challenge with your liver. Because a lot of women show up in this stage with estrogen dominance. If she's had fibroids before or challenges, or she's had PCOS. So it kind of gives you clues as to, okay, if I give her testosterone, is she actually going to break that down properly in her body? There's another new test too called the hormone zoomer that does all of the metabolites, but also looks at environmental factors. So it looks at phthalates, it looks at BPA, it looks at all the things that can raise your exogenous estrogens in your body, which I think is great because that's a conversation I think that's needed too, which impacts so much of how we feel physically and even emotionally too.